So if Mohab doesn't come on, what do you want me to do?
Well, I'm gonna introduce at 7:05. We're gonna start, I
Okay.
think. And then I'm gonna introduce you, Kelly, and then hopefully he got the email that I just sent him that we start at 7 o'clock Eastern, and hopefully he'll come in the waiting room. And then, you know, I can just keep an eye out for him, and then he'll go second and I can introduce him then. I was gonna introduce you both at the beginning, but
Okay.
I'll just introduce you now.
Got it. Let's see.
Should I let him in, Suzanne?
Yeah, and then I'll just get started.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Jeremy. Thanks for coming tonight. We're waiting for Moheb to come, but we're going to start the reading now. And just very pleased and honored to host both Kelly and Moheb. Kelly Harris-DeBerry lives in New Orleans, and one reason I was excited about this reading is because it unites two poets on different ends of the Mississippi River. Kelly lives in New Orleans, but's from Cleveland. And I still remember her first very impressive reading at Max. And I'm not sure, that was probably about 20 years ago, Kelly. And her talent was immediately apparent back then. And then Freedom Knows My Name, this book is so good. It's, I think, the full flowering of that promise from over 20 years ago, Kelly. From a poem about her grandfather's migration to Cleveland to her grandmother's preparations for death. From a poem about a gentrifying New Orleans to a brilliant picture poem about Serena Williams. This work in this book burrows deep. Some of Kelly's publishing credits include 400 Years, the story of Black people in poems written from love, 1619 to 2019, and Words Beaten Life, the global journey of hip hop. Kelly's a literary curator and is the New Orleans poet and writer's literary coordinator. And Freedom Knows My Name is her first full-length book published by Xavier Review Press. So thank you for coming, and turning it over to Kelly.
Well, thank you, Suzanne. It's a pleasure. Really, you know, of all the readings that I do, doing the ones when I'm reconnected to home are extra special for me. So thank you for having me. I imagine myself being there, hearing the clank of dishes next door at Tommy's and running across the street, perhaps to Mark's to get some things for home. So it is a pleasure to be with you and to celebrate. I celebrate Max for all that it's done for writers in Cleveland. And it was the first place that had my books on the shelf when they were stapled and glued and all of those things. So it's a pleasure to be with you. I'm going to begin with a poem that is not in the book, but I feel it's necessary. The water next time might be in your city. Ask Flint, ask New Orleans, how water travels rivers and throats. Our mouths an ocean of salt and bones. There are drummers underwater, under floorboards, pushing tables and cars on their backs. Ashes of truth scattered like rain. We die a little each day, drowning in penitentiary zip codes, north or south. It's winter everywhere. Our water is your water. You, them, you, us. Ask your mama how water breaks into newborn, survival breath, our heads barely above tombstones. I want more than dry land and hope. What is a country without a lighthouse? Small waves of darkness rise into giants coming ashore. The clouds weep over rooftops and sunsets. Earth could have been more than a purse, more than a rich graveyard. Who sold the limbs and peeled the trees? Who tarnished the land with king-size living? Who burned the sugar from the stars? We, the water, we, the wounded.
Wow, I just have to say that. Wow.
Oh, thank you. Let's see where I want to go tonight. Suzanne, you mentioned in the intro that I am from Cleveland, and I always make a slight distinction that I am from East Cleveland. And people who are from East Cleveland always kind of make that distinction. And so I want to read a poem for my old neighborhood called For Girls on Bender Avenue, excuse me. I should know where every poem is in the book, and I don't still. For Bender Avenue Girls. Chalk names on concrete squares, warn the world, step to us with a bouquet of respect. We live here too among blades of boys and broken classroom windows. After school, the smell of urine and flirty old men fill the streets. Fast, girls, because we gotta be moving like a unit of soldiers, ready to pull knives, jump ropes and fences, showing dogs silent. We still walk above factory smoke, braid our hair like a Mary J. album, our laughter loud and lonely. Eligible for living on blocks where cheese and children get chopped in sections of 8. Kinfolk tell stories in kitchens of Alabama and burning crosses. We daughters of runaway Negroes, still bent in the fields of yesterday, map our mothers veined in our palms. We catch buses and side eyes while searching for the same North Star that brought us here. We survive like every bad mayor elected, pretend our tears are hard laughs. Word on the street is our bodies flow easy. No daddies stand guard at our doors, but we cross our arms into Black girl stance under street lights, popping gum like warning shots. And let's see. I have my Post-its. Okay, I'll do this poem. People in Cleveland may know of Reverend Wagner. And so there was this house in East Cleveland that had all kinds of artifacts and art and things in the yard. It was near the East Cleveland Library. And Reverend Wagner was this amazing folk artist, and he was featured in New York Times and all sorts of places. And I finally one day got to go into this home, and it's for Reverend Wagner. Wild rainbow of a house. Crazy nigga, some say. Heard God and magic snakes lived there. I witnessed the Reverend slanted in a twin bed, a landscape of genius, mouth like a cursive O, a Sun Ra kind of prayer, no telling what planet Rev was on. It was all a zigzag, a petting zoo of philosophies. You are a bowling ball with 3 eyes, he said, mind, body, and spirit. Head towards those devils. Leave none standing. Oh, I'm trying to find my. Let's see. Thank you all for your patience. So I said I grew up in East Cleveland, and one of the things that I tell people all the time was I saw it as, I see it now kind of reminiscing. It's kind of like this little Africa. There were many Black business owners. My mom was a business owner in East Cleveland. She had a hair shop. There were always Black people around. And it wasn't until we moved to the suburbs that I saw white people more, like neighbors and all of those kinds of things. And so to my surprise later, when I found out that East Cleveland was once diverse and considered a suburb and a great place for families. And that's how my grandparents got to East Cleveland. That's how my family got there. It made me really think about what happened to East Cleveland all this time. And so this poem is called Migration, My Family, My Cleveland. Left your land for a job. That same Southern job. The always job of surviving white folks. Working hard ain't never impressed them. Why a farmer like you go north? The land is hitched to steel and tight-lipped mornings. No elbow room for joy. No time to rock the earth asleep. Had a porch, a pulpit then. Stories sprouted from dirt and spirit. Here ain't by the riverside. Don't flow back to ancient gospels. God is a check here, a blue collar, a few days off. Remember those clockless days when soil called you to work. I reckon it's worth leaving the land if heaven is up. Away from cotton, away from the wrong white people, hoping to find the right ones. Maybe up there, clan fires fade into rear view, trees dangle the weight of snow. How'd you learn to live in the cold and rude and disrespect? They don't sip nothing sweet up here. Lynched us with good, bad jobs and better than Mississippi hope, brick by brick, stacking generations of heavy breathers of smoke, polite anger. I weep for all the times the Navy called you boy, all the middle fingers you should have raised, all the labor, half the paycheck, all the white flight that left big city rats eating the floorboards nailed from your knees, your blood in the wood, your blood in the would have been. I live the same two-step blues of kinfolk made in the Delta, integrated with white children whose parents were the white people that niggered you. How many miles did you travel to be more than fractions of a dream? Grandpa, did you ever cross the Dixie again in your sleep? Did you ever bring America home? Let's see. Two more, I guess. Susan, can you tell me how my time is?
Kelly, you have about 10 more minutes,
Okay.
or, yeah,
Gotcha.
however, I mean, I could listen to you forever into midnight. So this is really good. Thank
I
you.
just want to kind of pace myself. I feel like I'm reading fast, but maybe not. So Susan mentioned in my introduction this gentrification poem, and I'm going to kind of show it. So the poem is structured like a neighborhood, and all the stanzas are possibly homes and neighborhoods where people live. So New Orleans is very gentrified now. And at first, when I was writing the poem, I was going to make it about just New Orleans gentrification, but I realized it can be applied to any city in America. And so this is a true story. It's called Coming Home to a Stranger Wanting to Buy My House That's Not for Sale. They don't ask, they don't knock. They drive down your block to see what you got. They measure your grass, they moving fast. By the time that you look, it's already took. Erase what you had, make it brand new. Upscale all the food, appropriate you. Sell all the schools, cheat on the scores, blame all the kids, corporate biz, nonprofit pimps, tourist trips. They come for the culture, take it all over, make you a stranger, displace all your neighbors. They don't ask, they don't knock, they drive down your block to see what you got. By the time that you look, it's already took. They call it organic, say it's for good, hide the oppression, then call it progression. Save your complex inner city checks. Grant statistics, police at my door say I look suspicious. They don't ask, they don't knock, they drive down your block to see what you got. By the time that you look, it's already took. Knock, knock. Who is it? Who is it? Who? A knock, knock. Who is it? Who is it? Who? And I will do one more. Trying to decide. Suzanne, I'll let you pick the last poem. What would you like?
Well, I like the one back in Cleveland, the other poem about East Cleveland, well, another poem about East Cleveland about Shaw High School. And
okay, I'll do that one. An interesting fact is that every Mardi Gras Shaw High School band is in New Orleans.
really,
Participating in Mardi Gras and marching. And every time I see them, I scream and shout and go introduce myself. And it's, you know, it's so good to see the city represented away from home. And just one note about gentrification. Every time I go home, I see the changes that are happening in Cleveland. And it's like, wow, it's amazing. And I'm happy for some of the things that are happening. I know everything is not perfect, but happy about that. And Shaw High School marching band has a great reputation in New Orleans, and they always do these battles with the other high schools here, and they hold their own. Like ants in uniform, Black legs marched a maze of music. From porches and curbs, we watched all the neighborhood kids line up carefully like dominoes. Mothers calling their child through megaphoned hands. Little Bump was the smallest big head behind the tuba. Go on, boy. Tasha twirled everything forbidden. All of them, glamorous proof that we were more than ghetto, more than bullets. All that red on their bodies in the streets was not blood. Thank you.
thanks, Kelly. You know, before we, this phone is going to ring for a second. It's going to be noisy for just a second. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about what your life is like in New Orleans now. I know you work with the literary community down there. What kind of stuff are you doing?
Should I wait?
Yes. Sorry about that. There we go. People mostly just want to know what the hours are.
Um, it's different. I really had to, it's been both difficult and easy to transition from one writing community to another. But I think New Orleans is a place that is very welcoming and has embraced me. So that's good. And people don't usually think of New Orleans as a literary city, right? You know, we think of Mardi Gras and crawfish and all of those things, but it does have a very rich literary tradition here as well, the Tennessee Williams Fest, you know, all of those things. So I have kind of grown up when I left Cleveland. Oh my gosh, a very long time ago, probably like right? It was right at Katrina. So yeah, probably like 15 years ago. I was still kind of becoming, you know, and so I've found more ways to be a writer than performing. I teach, I do all sorts of things. So I've kind of grown up a little bit as a writer. I hope so. So I think I like to think of myself as that, but so many things come through New Orleans nationally. It is kind of a darling in the South still.
Yeah.
So that provides a lot of opportunity, and poets and writers had this initiative that they were looking at cities. And I have been trying to, you know, drum for Cleveland to be selected in whatever the next round will be. But working to really cultivate community and to give opportunities to local writers. You know, a lot of writers are still recovering after Hurricane Katrina and now Hurricane Ida. So we are always in that challenge of weather, but it's been a good ride. And people ask me, do I like one city more than the other? They're different, you know.
Yeah.
Like I lived Cleveland my childhood, all of that. I've lived New Orleans, married, mom, all of that. So they're different, but I love them in different ways, you know, but the same as well. So thank you for having me. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I remember, I know there's a huge literary tradition in New Orleans. And I remember several years ago, I saw a movie. It was an independent film about a small press in New Orleans. Maybe they were like in the 40s, 50s, 60s. And it was, I'll have to just like email you the name of it. It was a really great film that the Cleveland's Poets and Writers League showed in Cleveland probably about 10 years ago. So.
And I should shout out Ray McNeese for a second. This is a true story. Apparently he was in New Orleans and didn't know I was in New Orleans. This was like a couple of years ago. And he went to this bar where I was going to be featured, and he saw my name on the sign. And he said, he went to whoever the owner was, and he was like, she's a great poet. Make sure you know, take good care of her, you know, and he drummed me up. And you know, so when I got there the next night, they were like, Ray McNeese says hi, you know. So wow, shout out to Ray McNeese. And usually if people come from Cleveland and they know I'm here, you know, we try to hook up and people, you know, contact me. I've seen Salinger and Sarah here and, you know, other folks, Michelle Rankins and other people. So it's good. It's good. Thank you.
You're welcome, Kelly. Thank you so much. It's really great to see you. So I know Moheb is here and just want to talk about his book a little bit. This is Homes. And I was originally connected to Moheb by Jeremy Prohl, who had seen Moheb read in Erie. And thanks, Jeremy, for that. So Homes is published by Coffee House Press, and it's a circle tour of the Great Lakes. Poems of place that honor and decipher our expansive habitat here, whether it's cities or dunes. And opening this book, I just longed for a few hours and the sand at Menor Headlands or Presque Isle, where I could read these poems and look at the sky and look at the water and think about what I was reading and think about, you know, the vitality of this geography that I've always been a part of. Moheb is an interdisciplinary poet from Egypt and the Midwest. He's presented writing, performance, installation, and video work at various public spaces throughout the United States and Canada. And he lives in Minneapolis. And Moheb, one of one of the reasons that I wanted to pair you and Kelly was because you're at different ends of the Mississippi River, and I thought that would be interesting. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Oh, Moheb, I think you're still muted. No, still muted. Not yet. Okay, that sounds good. And while Moheb is doing that, I just wanted to say, Kelly, there's a foreword in your book written by Kalmu Yasalam. And I feel now that I should read this before every reading. And part of that foreword says, listen, behold, a poet speaks to the heart of each of us, articulates the acme, the zenith of human endeavor. The poet, she is the sound of wonderful.
I forgot to say thank you. I know when he wrote that and sent it to me, I was like, I don't know if I'm that person. I hope so, you know. And he said, well, don't make me a liar. So,
No.
but he is very well known in the Black arts movement, poetry scene, and has done a lot of work. And I was told to go to him first when I got to New Orleans he was kind of the gateway and the elder. And so I did that. And, you know, out of respect, you know, I really wanted to come into the community being very respectful. And so he's been kind of having me under his wing the whole time, and has some great books and some great poems as well. I think I may have one of them around here. But I forgot to say, oh, go ahead, there he is. That there is a code on the back of my book, and you scan it, there's live read, you can hear me read some of the poems. So, but Moheb's back, thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Jeez. You all, I really, you know, I went into a whole speech saying I'm so sorry that I messed up my time zones, and then, you know, I didn't even get a chance to apologize about the time zones when my technology was failing. So I guess I've just been, you know, really kind of pushing it to the max. I was in Tulsa yesterday and drove the 11 hours back to Minnesota, and I guess I just haven't been, you know, kind of with it. So I've just been looking forward to this for so long, and you know, I'm sorry to have missed our beginning and, you know, our little check-in, Suzanne and Kelly. Kelly, I did get to catch most of your reading, and I really appreciated it. And it just feels really, you know, all the more rude not to have been here with this like really beautiful, sweet group of people. So I just want to say again, you know, really thank you, apologies, and I'm just glad to be here. I don't know.
About it. Get glitches too, so no worries.
Yeah, cool. Well, and yeah, thank you, Jeremy. And it's really, you know, nice to see you here too. You know, Jeremy and I kind of connected in Marquette, and and you know, it's just really wonderful. I mean, to me, it really speaks just directly to so much of the things that I think about with this book, that these really far-flung places around the Great Lakes region are actually really connected. You know, people just are constantly kind of moving back and forth to so many small spots, and across the border internationally, and, you know, between states. And you know, that kind of really means a lot to me, and I think adds a lot to the imaginary that I have thinking about this really, you know, kind of giant fractured bioregion as one place. And you know, it's interesting, Suzanne, that you then kind of brought up this idea that hadn't occurred to me, that you were pairing a whole other bioregion, you know, the ends of the Mississippi, which is really kind of beautiful. You know, that's that's maybe a road trip to do for another year or something, but that would be a really kind of phenomenal and beautiful thing to do. And also, I think equally as with the Great Lakes, probably pretty like humbling and homely too, to see some of those, struggling spots along the Mississippi. It moves through so many different spaces. So anyway, I mean, yeah, I would love to read some of this work to you. I felt like I should just kind of, give a really kind of basic background on this book that I've been working forever on, and how I, wound up here with it. I feel really lucky to have had this published finally. It's kind of an accumulation of poems that started even as far back as 2007. I was living in Toronto at the time, for the first time really living in a daily way with the Great Lakes and, with Lake Ontario. Something that probably a lot of people who live in the region, like in Cleveland, just kind of take for granted, possibly, of, what it's like to kind of live with this giant, sublime, larger than life body of water in a daily way. And it really moved me, just kind of day in and day out, like I was saying, in Toronto. And I started to get really curious about, this inland sea, and all the ways that it's coherent, but also deeply fractured. So the book is kind of, what I think of as like postmodern nature poetry, because it's really kind of trying to revive or, kind of embrace nature. Wilderness is kind of like a supreme other that we have a relationship with, but in our time, not being able to be naive about some of the environmental issues, social justice issues, all of the things that we sort of are working through together and separately, as we kind of try to reckon with our place here in this country, North America, the planet. So yeah, the book kind of is, like I was saying, an accumulation of poems, really specific kind of microcosmic renderings or encounters with a lot of places all over the region that hopefully kind of adds up to the more than the sum of its parts. I think, Suzanne, you were mentioning kind of travel. In 2015, I was able to circle the region for 4 months through a fellowship, and that was really lucky. And, I got to work with a lot of local organizations throughout the region to kind of get a feeling of the place through kind of an insider perspective. So that really, added a lot to the book. And I think for the first time, I was like, maybe I have a book on my hands. Maybe these aren't just a bunch of poems that I'm doing, performance or installation work with, but maybe these can stand on their own. And, it took a while for that to come together. But I guess I kind of want to just leave on that note about travel, because I think a lot of the works that I'm sharing, will have a real sense of transience, a sense of, kind of an insider-outsider perspective, a longing for the local, for, understanding how to belong to a place as someone who, is kind of from here and kind of not. I was born in Egypt and I moved to the US as a kid when I was 6, and spent most of my life in Ohio, and have lived in Michigan and Canada, like I was saying. And so, you feel like, can I claim this entire place as home? How big can a place be? And I think these poems kind of try to ask that. But anyway, enough blabbing. Thank you again. And I want to dive into this poem on page 2. So I think it really sets up, some of this kind of travel log. It's called At Point Pelee, Leamington, Sandusky, Cedar Point. This beach has more than 2 sides, more than the lake and the parking lot, and cultivated and sandwiches, farms and kiosks aside it, and defies properties. I've peed behind every sort of flora, scared away all kind of fauna. I crossed the lines of R&R to bridge the banks of Maine and head streets and waters. I tried myself, had myself washed ashore to hamlets, face up. The whole time my figure a petty viaduct only a shallow beach could love. I swam each day, I changed myself inside the Corolla, and diaspora'd footfalls of mollusky sand all over the motel districts of Canuck Sanduskies, where in touch more with nature's what they are, more than amusement or national park and lark. Cedar Point and the tip, this land does not come to states, means, ends, nations, and defies commodity, recreations, and conservations. This place has more than the all-nighter primitive drive-through and the camping. This whole time my body held in feet of surf, not diverting to the water or exiting, but bridges fail all the time, nothing new. Bridges are being built and rebuilt all over these lakes, adding sides to no end, defying the accounts of travelers, homing in, pointing out. We came in off the water, not really having been out there. You come out of the water, turn right, around, get back in there. I'm going out to the water, never really having left there. So yeah, you know, a real kind of transient poem. It's almost kind of hard to not find that sort of feeling of longing and sort of loss, I think, throughout the book. The next one I was going to read, I think, is very much like that too, but it sort of takes a bit more of like an environmental tact, I guess. I really, you know, in trying to think of like a bioregion, I really wanted to resist writing like an environmentalist book. It's just not the way I feel about kind of how we have to like make do with the compromised state of, you know, wilderness, especially in, you know, this like industry heavy region where we live. But, you know, sometimes it just kind of felt like it had to happen. And I think this is one of the few times in this book. So this is called Lighthouse Lit, Dawn Opaque, from Marinette to Menominee. You could hide a lot in fog. I saw no terrace with chairs, hot tub, outdoor shower, ski-doo in silting lawn, and beagle dragging a bikini top behind. After sleeping in it, I was packing the car at dawn. All life seemed out of touch of water and its problems. A lot in fog. No sign but scent of the smoked trout. No breakfast, no idea how to flop back into place, swim to life, and drive to death before the cape burns off and leaves the world again to painfully obvious warming. By then, the neighborhood will have emptied onto the beach till the beach fills in the neighborhood. How can things be always too late? Always on the lookout for more ice and gas. The climate changes right before you know it. 100 years from today, the moment of efficacy, as if it's always already past, and all that's left to do is lie and bask and look out. A giant tanker slowly shredding the horizon, a lot in fog. The next poem I'll read to you, gosh, I feel like I earmarked a bunch of poems. I was like, I was like, okay, I'm hitting Cleveland here. I need to kind of like really give them a bunch of poems that have nothing to do with, you know, Lake Erie or the locality. But I think I find myself maybe even with like, maybe the book is weighted towards Lake Erie because I grew up in Ohio. I don't know. I should actually do a count of that in the book. But so anyway, there's a series of poems in this book that are like the lost cities of the Great Lakes, you know, kind of playing with the lost city of Atlantis, but kind of trying to reckon with the complicated and, you know, controversial, I would say also history of the region as kind of a tact to understand like how we frame history, who's in it, who's outside of it. And especially for me as an immigrant to the US, you know, it's both kind of liberating to not have some of that history here, but also all the more, I think, kind of tricky to understand how to like enter the narrative of belonging, because you sort of come in through the powers that be. Anyway, I'll talk about that more with a different poem, but this is kind of a poem that's kind of thinking pretty absurdly with the lost city of Lake Erie. It was a port that sank, not a freighter or steamer or one of Perry's fleet, but a whole port for sailboats, not leisure, but Pelt era maritime's latest gallivanting technology, fettering the interior with metalled whites. It was a point on the way that LaSalle anointed with French flowers de lis, and Father Hennepin with him in seamen, tea and shale sparks with his steel clog ground. It blossomed into a port city on the shallowest lake of the whole unmarshaled region, some spot in the marshes before Leamington and beyond Ports Dover and Stanley. Personally, I believe it was Rondeau. I met a regiment of memory there, what it was being foreigns and braves and genuinely gods-fearing and raising a palisade and wheat and fermenting a trade zone that dried up, that flooded next spring. The marine life leaves some artifacts untouched on the lake bed, some conjecture. Some dive, a book reports, the canon. Maps were found with drawings of marquettes of the horseshoe of Niagara less crumbled, and calculated the distance to the port's crude first European wigwams with arrowed hearts in the parchment's margins. Zealots' destinations, speciously barked up whole woods of ash and maple, abandoned when the faith didn't take. It's murky what happened, what lost, what left, the wives, kids, orphans, chattel, missions, crosses, X'd into land escapes. The next poem I want to read to you is sort of a kind of also working with that, like, I guess you would say absurdist angle, but where science and geology and kind of like deep ecological time are concerned. When I was traveling around the region, it was like a real point to me to try to like hit all of the local science museums, local history museums, and really kind of from the inside out understand how this region was, officially presenting itself. And it's so interesting, you go to just so many tiny towns and, they've really invested so much in like really framing themselves and sort of trying to kind of wrestle with, their lumber history, their mining history, trying to also kind of sometimes walk the line when, when it's a science museum about sort of, you can tell that there's like environmentalist kind of like leanings, but they oftentimes are based in like conservative, smaller communities. And it's just kind of like a lot to work with. And, sometimes you can feel so jaded about like, oh, this little place and, how it's kind of trying to frame all these important, issues. But I feel like it's a stronger move to like try to not be jaded about it, and kind of just work with a more like absurdist angle, like I was saying. So yeah, in the same way that Lost City of Lake Erie and those other poems were kind of working that way with history, this one is kind of working with that in environmental terms, I guess. So yeah, the title of the poem, I think, sums up some things. It's basically a long list of all of these places. Talks at Great Lakes Science Center, SS Meteor Maritime Museum, Marine Museum of the Great Lakes Lore Maritime Museum, Great Lakes Historical Society, Shipwreck Museum of the, and it goes on, the title. Fish advisories, hatcheries, carbon and credit dioxide and card deals, oxygen depletion, leachate, oxen, chicken, scat, smelt and eaten, research, veto, funding dung, zoo and phytoplankton, finding purchase, zebra mussel, alewife, sea lamprey, purple loosestrife, European buckthorn, exotic species, that is immigration, beautification and eutrophication, lake stratification and turnover from the peopled epilimnion to the deep sunk hypo needling the tepid thermocline, moisture-bearing care packages, hydrologic unicycles, suspended particles, and articles. The Great Lakes, or they're one. When the early Lake Algonquin poured out 3 ways to the Atlantic and 1 way to the Mexico Gulf, our region evolved as the first rest area in an era humanless. Land was cut into water by a constant stream of glaciers summering in pre-Georgian Bay. Perverse creatures of the lust to wander camped their proto-RVs in fields of Pleistocene weeds. Minerals were compacted to bracelets, chains of islands big. Civilization was the frontier to nature. It sprung up everywhere with its vistas, the love of which was only survival for us newbies with balls of eyes. Pre-Americans vying with no British for ascendancy of Frenchless and non-native held lands. Not even algae was invasive. But it was nonetheless languorous chaos in the wilderness, and skin did grow thick on the teeth, and by it time stoically passed. Language was impossible. Vowels confused with consonants. Water and continent were one. Consonants with continents, with water and vowels. Everywhere was a sort of water Pangea, a lake somehow floating invisibly in a sea. 2 Pangeas, impossible. Like your eyes say. 2 Pangeas. Deafening blue, jagged green, flake at heart. Black iris folding out the dark. First life. Life is too impossible. A touch away from your face, and it's as if I get a look at life from space. The world is two. Land and water, shallow and possible. I wait and 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 wait. Sweaty in this room, excuse me. I have just a few more poems I want to read you. I sort of like, I want to really represent a dimension of this book that means so much to me, but it kind of definitely, steers away from the regional, and it's kind of very autobiographical. There's, I think for me, coming here as a kid, it's like, I really identify so much as a Midwesterner. But of course, like since 9/11, there's been kind of an intense, light on Arab Americans. And I think there's kind of been a call, to be vigilant about your identity, especially, in our time. And I sort of, always feel like I'm threading the needle with that. And I think in a lot of ways, my interest in like thinking about wilderness or nature is kind of a way to sort of try to find an escape from the, kind of racializing that happens on both sides, even sort of in being progressive and sort of having to carry the mantle of identity sometimes. So yeah, I think this book, can sometimes, try to find ways both to address identity issues and also at the same time kind of try to escape them. So I thought I would just try to share a couple of poems that are kind of working with that. Another kind of layer to that too is, trying to also understand like what it is to be here and to have a narrative of belonging or try to claim a place while you're also, there are other kind of narratives of place here. There are the Native, Indigenous, First Nations, and there are also like settler, culture that is kind of the mainstream. And immigrants are kind of here through that infrastructure. And yet they, in so many ways, I think, share some of the same marginalized experiences as Native and Indigenous people, but they know so little about each other oftentimes. And I think that there are reasons for that are maybe very different, in both of those experiences. But there's kind of a vein too in this book of trying to understand, that narrative of belonging. So yeah, I think I'll just read that poem here. This is a Lake Huron poem. There's a really like giant, beautiful island there called Manitoulin Island. That's a First Nations, basically. I think it might even be an unceded reserve. So yeah, the poem's called Dogged, Majestic Manitoulin Notes Instead of Thank You Note. Free samples of cigarettes. Now, that's the American spirit. So many impoverished states of being free and having choice. Smoking at a gas station. Indian country smokes. We took a couple sagos. My host bought a carton of putters. I gifted him a lighter. Now that's the Canadian spirit. The province of brotherly love, hanging smoggily over other provinces of affiliation. We didn't have anything in common. Theater, split ends, stretch marks, Pearl Jam. We'd rather be with an animal. But we were raced together at the neck. Two-headed, brown, cowed, yet unseated. No man is a reserve and no one is illegal. Don't totally believe it, because I grew up bent so hard on being legal. But there were some at our Coptic church who came in through the back door or the window. Hard for some to grasp. Christians that are Arab. Not that I believe, but I can appreciate embracing the country through a window. He drove me all around. The land, the bays, pulled the curtain on his family. They laughed. The best Indian pizza. DeBaj Art Center. His church. I still can't understand it. Catholic Anishinaabe. The roofless ruin by its side, the site of a Crystal Shawanda country music video, and his troops' plays and his monologues. Told me about a pack of deer one morning swimming across the bay. Bad fishing turned good hunting, using oars to knock them dead. Rope around the heads. Takes a long, slow drag. Gives me a taste of his new song. All I remember is our half brothers, we half love you, is all I needed to hear. A stranger in a strange land is in a way home. I think that Bible line ought to go. Yes, I am a native, Arab, American. I welcome these indigenous cats, all French dogs and British pigs and all off-color offspring to this special place of eternal circling that I claim as my territory, and I place this claim right in with everyone else's offensive. I hand over fist, feed my left foot to my own big mouth to call this transient settlement. I'm not proud. I accept all food and beverages and medicine, fresh and sweet, grass and water, sage and cedar, sacred and cheap tobacco he gifted me when I left, and I put the box in the dashboard and went back looking for the 200 count unbranded you get zipped in a plastic bag. The next poem, it's a Cleveland poem. Yeah, I grew up in Columbus, and I never made it up to Cleveland nearly enough. And I had no idea for a while, like, that there was this giant lake there. We had relatives there, and that comes up here. But it's so interesting, just how close, like, you can be to this ocean and not even have a relationship to it. So Actually, and right now, in Minneapolis, I'm just almost exactly the same amount of miles and minutes away from Duluth. That's right on Lake Superior, and it's really the same thing. So yeah, this poem's called Geneva State Park, No Sight of the Lake, Geneva on the Lake, Ohio. Last night we snuck into the state park, real late, to sleep in my tent by the car. On the paved driveway of a muddy site, drizzle invisible in a wood pervasive with knocked out buckeyes, corn-fed and golden-haired, and the fires put out. A thick gauze sat, whispering, undocumented, we gulped each half an orange watermelon. 2 itinerant sore thumbs stuck out. In the wooded preserve among corn stalks, we feasted on watermelon as a family for dinner with feta, pita, Diet Coke. Last night we stole a night in our home state park, but didn't go down to mom and dad's. Didn't see the Cleveland relatives, Browns, Indians, games, mounds, grandma's grave. Last night it rained, and nothing heard the lake stir once from the downpour. The morning was too quiet, black and slick. We split for a diner then, always novel to us, before any sighting in the woods of us. Lights head low with the sun soon to clean its plate in the vapor of our gross great lake, us, the vapor, that's our family. I'm just gonna read you one more poem. Thank you so much, and I would love to, talk more with you all, and just kind of I don't know, I'll hear your kind of experiences actually, and notions and sense of Lake Erie and the entirety of the region. I mean, it's so interesting how people can have such a relationship to one corner of it, and the rest of it is kind of just this abstraction, and yet at the same time, people also have these like far-flung connections, like Jeremy, you and Alpina, and so many other people I've come across. So in doing all this traveling, this book is so full of like struggle and angst and existential crisis and whatnot. But I mean, it was just such a beautiful, gorgeous time. It's such an incredibly wild, and yet also populous region. I just am always looking for any excuse to get back out there and, find myself in so many of these places that I fell in love with. And this is like, to me, one of the few poems that kind of shares that. It's hard to write like a joyous poem kind of. So yeah, this is just a real kind of simple poem called On the Water. And the world entire would load before your eyes. And there's no more. And cache is clear. And all songs stream at once. The sound delayed. Avatars retired. And all seasons complete at once. With the earth tilted on its axis no more. The weekend's lightning, languorous arms stretched after lunch. You can't take more. And the robes are soaked. Why? They can't absorb another drop. And what's more, washes over unimpeded now. And there's more. The morning after all justice meted out, all grudges would be lost in the cloud. And power would go out, and all leisure would be more radical then. And the fight would go out of you, with the world at your fingertips, guiding your hand to the ends of luxury. It doesn't get any better than this. There's more of the same, and who could want more? Thank you so much for being here with me and us. And, again, apologies for jumping in at the last minute.
Well, thank you so much. That was that was a great reading. It made me think about some stuff. I mean, you were in Columbus and felt, like you didn't know Lake Erie, and we're in Cleveland sometimes and feel like we don't know Lake Erie because it's been so built up, by everything. And I remember when I was a young woman, I got out of college, I had a bicycle, and I thought to myself very naively, I'm going to go to the lake and ride my bicycle around the lake. Well, there was nowhere to go. There was no there. And I remember I was in some parking lot by, trying to find the lake, and I got a stick caught in the bicycle spokes, and it was just like a metaphor for the barrier that industry had put between people and the lake. And it is getting better now. I mean, there's more touch points being developed and bicycle paths and stuff. So it's way better than when I was a young woman, and really all these years in Cleveland. But so I related to what you said about that.
Yeah. I wonder, Kelly, like, was that the same for you, or what was your experience like with that there?
Yeah, it was. It was like the Lake Erie is there, but not accessible, but always impactful when we talk about the lake effect, in the snow in the winter. So it's like, yeah, we know it's there, but we don't really call its name until, we're cold. But listening to your reading, and I don't know if you heard the first poem that I read, where the first line is, the water next time might be in your city. And I'm talking about water and living in New Orleans, and, people north are always talking about, how do you live in the hurricanes and, all of that kind of stuff. And you all have water. And, I often say, well, you all have water too. It's just, it's a different form of it. And if your infrastructure does not hold, you're going to have flooding too.
That's a beautiful line.
About Horseshoe Lake, this contention about Horseshoe Lake, and the water near there, and how people want to, I think, get rid of some of the land or something. And there's a side that says, this could cause flooding. There's a side that says we don't need, this anymore. So it's very interesting. I feel like I say now more that I'm living around water, although I was always living around water.
Yeah.
But it's more pronounced here. Like, people go to the lake, they eat their crawfish. Just like, people live life and everything around the water here, both good and bad. So you have your fun by the water, you have your rituals by the water, the African influence in New Orleans is, they say it's the most African city. So you have kind of African traditions being done still around water. And then you have flooding and hurricane and, all of that. So it's very interesting. And I will admit, I did not understand, or appreciate, I should say, the power of water until I got to New Orleans. And one day I'm on the interstate driving. And this was like when I first got here. Like, people don't even freak out about flooding here the way that I used to when I first got to New Orleans. Like, I'm on the interstate driving and water is like coming back at me. And I'm like, wait, what is this? Like, I'm used to shoveling. I'm not used to this. So, and things that I've lost as a result of water, and the kind of calming of water, but the power of it is something that I'm not sure people can really understand unless they've experienced the destruction of it. So it's been interesting to hear you tonight, and to also kind of compare and contrast. When New York got flooded, this Hurricane Ida, suddenly people were like, oh my God, this can come up north, and it was very interesting how people know how to live with water here versus like, there's no way out, in the north, so it's very interesting the way that you live, the way that you have to prep just so many things that I didn't know. I was like, wow, I really should have paid more attention in Girl Scouts and some of those things we were learning about, nature and things of that, because it's just very interesting. Like, I have never owned so many rain boots in my life, but you have to have it here. So it's interesting, all that you said, and we really are going to have to contend with water. It's not going anywhere, and both living with water and our drinking water as well. And so, yeah, I feel like I'm living in a constant science project, because like water sits and it rises so fast. I mean, there's so many things I could talk about just living in New Orleans with that. And I feel like I'm prepared to live anywhere else if I ever wanted to, because it's taught me so much.
That's so interesting.
But I also, as you were talking, I have a very good friend here. We call her Andy. Her real name is Andrea. And she works at the School of the Arts. And she's done a lot of work with Egyptian poets. And so I should connect you.
Beautiful. Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, she's done amazing work and did work in Egypt. And she works at the School of the Arts here. So I'll be sure to. From
the Nile Delta to the New Orleans Delta.
And we have in the work that I've done, we did a grant to an Egyptian writer here in New Orleans. I can't call his name down right now, but
wow.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You talk about migration, being on the coast like we are, like fishing and seafood, like the Vietnamese culture is huge in New Orleans, like huge, so there's like a layer of that, inside of like Cajun culture. It's really,
wow.
Yeah. So I was going to mention Andy for sure. And also, I pulled it up as you were talking. I was trying to remember. Oh, Antana Art Gallery here. They have grants and do certain things. And I just small fellowships. And I thought that might be, because they're always looking at nature and water and things of that nature. So that might be something that you should check out.
It is interesting, like thank you, for all those ideas. I'll follow up, but just the idea that like when it endangers you, that's when it really becomes, like when you were talking about that, for all you Cleveland folks, of course, it made me think of the river catching fire and how that, changed the conversation around environmental issues, and it had to go that far or something, like it had to just really hit rock bottom.
Like I couldn't swim. I couldn't swim well in Cleveland, but it is almost like when I had my daughter, I was like, you are going to learn to swim, like all of these things that you don't think about, I remember our street flooded one time, and there are people who have boats just for flooding purposes, not even to just go out on maybe they do, but I remember it flooded really bad on my street, and nobody could get anywhere. And like these guys just like come down the street paddling on a boat. And I was like, so they just have like boats hanging around.
Right. Where were these boats?
And they do, and people do here, it's very interesting. If I were an engineer and could figure out some ways to help lessen the burden of flooding, I would be I would do it, and would probably make a lot of money in this area. We think of Florida and New Orleans and other places like that. And my last comment is like when I fly into New Orleans, like my husband has been on tours where they show the erosion of the coast. Like you can see it. Like you can see it when you're flying into New Orleans, just the water and the land. And, every time I look down at it, I'm like, I have been warned, I have been warned. So, it's crazy. But I think the Midwest, I was reading this article that was saying there's going to be another migration, and people are going to have to start living in the middle of the country.
Definitely.
That the Clevelands and the Detroits are going to benefit greatly from all this, climate concerns, because they've lost population and they're going to have the
Right.
space in the room to welcome people and for people to come and live there.
Right.
So yeah,
They're
I
the
mean,
ones with the fresh water, I mean,
yeah,
people talk
yes,
about that. I
yes,
think there is a
yeah,
fear about the Great Lakes being kind of an endangered, area because of some climate refugees, and I mean, it's an
mhm,
interesting thing to think about because it seems like there's so much water here,
mhm,
and yet, of course, it's its own ecosystem. I mean,
yeah,
it responds to stresses, and I've done so much kind of research myself actually about kind of how water can move in and out of the region. And, it's interestingly, there's like uh, there's something I think called like the Great Lakes Association of Governors and Premiers, where no water can leave the watershed unless all 8 governors and both premiers approve. So if someone, in Illinois, if a town that's just outside of Chicago, because the divide there, the watershed is so close to Lake Michigan right there. And of course, Chicago has broken through it and, turned the river backwards and all this stuff. But if there's some town in Illinois that's, going through drought and they appeal to their governor, that governor is hamstrung because of these, ecological bioregional issues to actually not share that water unless all of the other people approve. And I mean, I can see how that would sound so barbaric, like
yeah.
this town is struggling, but there's anyway, it's just so complicated. I mean, it really just shows,
It is.
just
It
how
is.
complicated where
Yeah.
your
And
situation is.
pumping, like pumping stations here,
Right.
how they get the water out and then they dump it back into the river, to the Mississippi. There's a lot of science to it as well. And I guess I really didn't recognize or just realize how much we live around water and how much science impacts
Yeah.
our living. So, it's always like when there's about to be a flood or a storm, all the pumps working, we have 8 big pumping stations, I think it's 14 maybe. And, all of this stuff that has to happen in order to keep New Orleans safe. And then the levees, and then, the engineer, I mean, it's a whole thing. So, and I hope that the Midwest can really see itself as a key player and really position itself to do the work. I mean, I think Cleveland is ripe for cost of living, all those things, to really reshape the city if they can figure out, because a lot of people are going to have to make hard choices about where they're going to live in the future.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that thing that you're talking about is the Great Lakes Compact.
Okay.
That was negotiated over a bunch of years. And I think the original intent was to keep our water here and not go to regions of the Southwest. Or
Right.
So, and like Kelly, like you just said, the climate refugees, I know this area is one of the places that are, appeal to people for that. So yeah, we're embarking on something very momentous, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So last question, what's next for both of you, as far as your literary life? You both just published books, so probably not going to be doing that super soon, but what are you looking forward to?
You go first.
Oh gosh, I was hoping you would know. I just finished writing this piece for the Louisiana Endowment for Humanities on this popular song called Casanova by Levert, which is a Cleveland group. In New Orleans, the brass bands have taken it and like it's like a thing in New Orleans, right?
Wow.
And so but most people here don't know that it started in Cleveland, that the song has a Cleveland origin. So I wrote this piece and it like became this buzz in the city. And so there's a Words and Music Festival happening in New Orleans next month. And I'm happy to say that I've gotten the last member of Levert to be on this panel with me, Gerald Levert's former music director. So Cleveland and New Orleans are going to be in conversation about culture and music. and it's strange because that song migrated south. Usually music, you think of the blues and all that stuff goes up north. But in this case, this Midwest song has become very popular, not only in New Orleans, but also in DC with go-go music. So that's something very immediate. And I'm just writing and doing some things. Maybe a children's book is next for me. But yeah, I'm still a poet first and foremost. That's my love. I don't think I have a fiction book or anything like that in me, but and I hope to be, actually, I was supposed to be there doing some things, and then Hurricane Ida and all that stuff happened, but I'm supposed to be there in the spring doing a couple of readings, so I'll keep you all posted. And one more question I see the coupon code is in the chat. Is that just for tonight only, or can I share that with other people?
No, you can share it. Yeah, we'll leave it up for a couple weeks.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. All right. Thanks.
Oh, welcome. Moheb, what's next for you?
Yeah, thank you also for that coupon code. It's virtual readings. It's hard to have that happen, so that's really sweet.
Mhm.
It's funny. I mean, I've been really like trying really hard. Again, it was really thinly veiled excuse, but I've been trying hard to get out into the region and do a bunch of readings with this book. And, it's been kind of an odyssey doing like a COVID book tour, but I honestly just was so excited to like get back out to so many places. And part of me feels like, I kind of like I needed to do that, but I also feel like maybe I should have started writing something. And I kind of feel like I'm spinning a bit, like I've been in such a bureaucratic mode trying to like give this book its space, and also just kind of, I don't know like when enough is enough and how to just start thinking about some of the ideas that I've got. I've definitely like want to, keep working with poetry. It's like you're saying, Kelly, like the first and foremost, but it's always kind of also been like the last thing I do because it's so fundamental. Like I just know that I will do this and it'll happen again. And so I can get really caught up with like other projects and other, like I'm an arts administrator. I do a lot of, work in that field. And it's like I'm afraid that I'm letting the bureaucracy of life just like kind of wear me down. So I hope I can kind of just, this winter, just let things kind of strip down and see, what's next, and start writing maybe without too much of a contrived idea, just to kind of like make that, it is what it is, and see what comes of it. But I will say that I've just had this like really weird book idea with there's a book called The Collected Works of Billy the Kid by Michael Ondaatje that I read way back when I was young, and it's kind of always been on my mind. And recently I like was thinking about writing this book about in that same way of like using a different, perspective to still look at like issues of identity and like American landscapes and wilderness. There's this figure named Hi Jolly, or otherwise actually known as Hajj Ali, and he was brought by the US military in the 1800s to help them try to get, armies across the desert using camels. So there was a camel corps, like a camel unit of the military that was kind of, a failed experiment in the deserts of the Southwest. And I just like, I'm completely fascinated by this subject and thinking about that person and sort of how they navigated, place and identity in wilderness. And so I'm still like really excited about like working with some of the themes that I think are in this book, but I really just kind of want to find like really different entry points and think about other voices and experiences. And it feels really good to me to think about like doing a lot of research instead of, just having a lot to like sink my teeth into. So, but I think that could also end up just kind of being a way to kind of kickstart myself into, something I don't know. But yeah, we'll see where that goes. And I mean, I definitely also hope to be coming through Ohio and Cleveland and, still like being back in the region. So, yeah.
Well, Thanks to both of you. This was really great, and I enjoyed our conversation afterwards too. And I just want you to know that these books have a home here at the bookstore, and we hand sold these. You know, Kelly knows our poetry section, and we'll have next time you're in Cleveland, you'll come and visit, I hope. And we are serious about poetry here and putting poetry in people's hands. And now I'm better acquainted with you, Moheb, and Kelly. You know, I'm always a big fan. So we'll make sure we'll be recommending these. So thank you so much for your time tonight and for sharing your work and yourselves with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Yeah, really,
Thank you,
really
Moheb.
sweet.
I have your email, so I'll try to
Exactly.
connect you to those resources.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good everyone. Bye.